After the battles, a quiet night. After the dust of battle had settled and the echoes of clashing swords had faded into memory, Abram found himself surrounded once again by silence. The land lay still beneath the night sky, and the hills of Canaan breathed slowly, as though the earth itself was resting after turmoil. Abram had returned victorious. He had defeated powerful kings, rescued Lot from captivity, and refused the spoils of conquest. His reputation had grown, yet his heart remained restless. Victory did not quiet his deepest longing. Wealth could not answer the ache that lingered within him. As he stood beneath the vast sky, Abram felt the weight of years pressing upon him. His tents were full, his flocks countless, his servants loyal, but his future felt strangely empty. He had no son. No child to inherit his name. No living continuation of the promise that had drawn him from his homeland so long ago. The stars shimmered above him, distant and innumerable, like sparks scattered across the darkness. Abram watched them, feeling both wonder and doubt rising together in his soul. It was then, in the stillness of night, that the presence of the Lord came to him in a vision. A promise spoken into fear. The word of the Lord entered the silence like light breaking through darkness. Abram was told not to fear, though fear had been his quiet companion since the battles ended. The Lord revealed himself as Abram's shield, the unseen protector who had guarded him through danger and loss. He also spoke of a reward beyond any earthly treasure, greater than gold, greater than victory. Yet Abram's heart could not remain silent. He poured out his truth with humility and honesty. What good were promises of greatness, he wondered, if he remained childless? His household would pass to a servant born under his roof. A man faithful yet not of Abram's own flesh. The promise of descendants seemed distant, almost unreachable, like the stars themselves. Abram did not speak with rebellion, but with vulnerability. His faith wrestled openly with his reality. The response from the Lord was clear and unwavering. The future would not belong to a servant. Abram's own son, born from his body, would be his heir. The promise was not abstract, not symbolic, but deeply personal and rooted in flesh and blood. The stars as a measure of hope. Abram was led outside his tent and told to lift his eyes to the heavens. The night sky stretched endlessly above him, filled with lights too many to count. Each star burned quietly, ancient and faithful in its place. So would Abram's descendants be, not few. Not fragile. But vast beyond numbering. In that moment, Abram did something profound. He believed. Not because he understood how the promise would be fulfilled, but because he trusted the one who spoke it. His faith was not loud or dramatic. It was a quiet surrender of doubt to hope. And that belief was counted to him as righteousness. The universe did not change in appearance, yet everything shifted in meaning. Abram stood beneath the same stars, but now they were no longer distant lights. They had become a living promise. The God who brings out and leads forward. The Lord reminded Abram of who he was, the one who had brought him out of Ur of the Chaldeans, out of a land of idols and old ties, into a future shaped by divine intention. The land Abram now walked upon was not temporary. It was meant to be inherited. Still, Abram sought assurance. Not from disbelief, but from a human longing for certainty. He asked how he could know that the land would truly belong to his descendants. The answer did not come in words alone, but in a sacred act that would bind heaven and earth. The covenant ritual at dusk. Abram was instructed to prepare a solemn offering. Animals were brought forth according to ancient custom, each chosen with care. They were cut and arranged, their halves laid opposite one another, forming a pathway of sacrifice. Birds were set aside whole, resting quietly nearby. As the sun began its descent, shadows stretched across the land. Birds of prey circled, drawn to the offering, but Abram drove them away, guarding the sacred space. The hours passed, and as twilight deepened, a heavy sleep fell upon Abram. Darkness wrapped around him, thick and overwhelming. Fear pressed into his chest, not the fear of danger, but the awe-filled dread of standing near something far greater than himself. A vision of suffering and hope. In the darkness, knowledge was revealed to Abram. He was shown a future not free of pain. His descendants would become strangers in a land not their own. They would be enslaved and oppressed for generations, suffering under the weight of foreign rule. Yet suffering would not be the final word. After many years, those descendants would emerge with great possessions, delivered by divine power. Justice would come upon their oppressors, and Abram's lineage would return to the promised land when its time was complete. As for Abram himself, he would not see this sorrow. He would live a long life and die in peace, laid to rest after his journey had run its course. The promise was vast, stretching beyond Abram's lifetime, binding generations yet unborn. Fire and smoke in the night. When the sun had fully set and the darkness was complete, a wonder appeared. A smoking fire pot and a blazing torch moved through the pathway between the divided animals. The fire glowed and pulsed, alive with holy power. Abram did not walk through the pieces, the Lord alone passed through the sacrifice. In this act, a covenant was sealed. The responsibility did not rest on Abram's strength or faithfulness alone, but on the unbreakable nature of God himself. The promise was sworn by divine presence, bound not by human effort, but by eternal will. The land was declared Abram's inheritance, stretching from the river of Egypt to the great Euphrates. Nations were named, peoples yet to be displaced, history already unfolding in the mind of God. The night held its breath as the covenant was completed. Meaning and lessons of Genesis 15. Genesis chapter 15 reveals a God who meets humanity in weakness rather than perfection. Abram is not portrayed as a flawless hero, but as a faithful man who dares to speak his doubts aloud. His honesty does not distance him from God, it draws him closer. This chapter teaches that faith is not the absence of questions, but the courage to trust amid uncertainty. Abram believes before he sees fulfillment, and that belief is counted as righteousness. Trust, not achievement, becomes the foundation of relationship with God. The covenant ceremony shows a profound truth about grace. In ancient times, both parties would walk through the sacrifice, symbolizing shared responsibility. Here, God alone passes through. The promise rests not on Abram's ability to remain faithful, but on God's unwavering commitment. This reveals a God who binds himself to humanity, accepting the cost of fulfillment upon himself. The vision of future suffering reminds us that promise does not eliminate hardship. The path toward fulfillment often wins through pain, waiting, and injustice. Yet suffering is never portrayed as meaningless. It exists within a larger story that moves toward redemption and restoration. Finally, Genesis 15 teaches patience. Abram receives the promise long before its realization. Generations will pass before its full unfolding. Faith learns to live between promise and fulfillment, trusting that what has been spoken will one day come to pass. Under the stars, Abram learns that God's plans are larger than a single lifetime, deeper than immediate understanding, and stronger than fear. And in that night, beneath a sky filled with light, humanity learns that hope is born not from certainty, but from trust in a faithful God.